You alright, Agent Maze? Yeah, that's good to know. How was that hunt for the rake creature? Oh, oh, geez, I can imagine how tough that is. Things have gone still pretty calm here so far. Thank God. Uh, yeah. All right. Okay. I'll call you if anything does go down. All right. Bye. Oh, yeah. Hello and welcome to the Anorak Review Show with your host, the Anorak. Happy belated Easter, of course. We had a bit of a caught up on some other things, and that was a call from a friend of mine. I'm sure he won't. I'm sure he may or may not get a spin-off series of his own. But anyways, for now, let's talk about Led Zeppelin's Presence. Produced and released a year after the successful and iconic Physical Graffiti, this album, despite topping a few charts in both here in the UK and in the US, and getting platinum certifications, this one didn't really sell as much copies as previous albums, and it even got mixed reviews upon its first release. But of course, in retrospect, nowadays, it has got more positive views from both fans and newcomers, and it has considered one of the more underrated albums. But would that still be so after over 45 years? Well, let's take a listen to Led Zeppelin's Presence and find out for ourselves. Beginning with probably one of Led Zeppelin's longest songs, more so than the likes of Kashmir and Stairway to Heaven, but second only to In My Time of Dying, Achilles' Last Stand. This song is, to me at least, one of those perfect balances between hard and prog rock stuff of the 70s. It's in a way the best of both styles and genres. The music itself reminds me of a mix between the bands Yes and Iron Maiden, and its lyrics often reference a bit of Eastern Moroccan mythology and folklore, while using them as a kind of allegory for modern day life of the mid to late 70s, similar to how Immigrant Song used Norse imagery as kind of a similar allegory as well. On the whole, it its own, with Robert Plant's always recognizable vocals, Jimmy Page's extravagant guitars, John Paul Jones' bass, and the late great John Bonham's drumming, this song is melded together well and is a worthy starter to this album. After that is For Your Life, a very groovy, almost psychedelic love song. The production quality is somewhat raw but very simple and simplistic, and that's fine. Less is more. When the music and instruments you play are already awesome on their own, there's probably sometimes no need to add on to that. Sometimes perfection can't be added on to. But anyways, this song in particular does definitely sound more like the classic Led Zeppelin of the late 60s and early 70s. This track also marked the first time Jimmy Page used the Fender Stratocaster, a very popular electric guitar model, which does make me wonder why he never used such a popular model up until this point for the band. After that is the next track, Royal Orleans, definitely the shortest track of the album, clocking at about 3 minutes. This was named after an actual hotel, the Omni Royal Orleans Hotel in Louisiana. Its lyrics were apparently inspired by an actual event that happened there. Apparently one of the members, either John Bonham or John Paul Jones, apparently picked up what seemed to be a drag queen or a transvestite. And there's even a bit of a name drop of Barry White of all people. Imagine that. Led Zeppelin referencing Barry White. What's next? Would Def Leppard do a song that mentions, I don't know, Isaac Hayes? This is also the only song of the album that credits all 4 members of writing it, which is kind of interesting. But regardless, this is definitely a short burst of groovy, dance-worthy rock and roll. and I think it's definitely worth a listen to. Next is Nobody's Fault But Mine, a rendition of an old blues song called It's Nobody's Fault But Mine by Blind Willie Johnson. This one is definitely a classic bluesy track. It's been kind of tradition for Led Zeppelin to pick and choose old obscure blues, American blues songs and kind of redo them, kind of remake them into something new, which some may find a bit plagiarist, depending on whether or not they credit them. But I still think they do a really good job as a result. Still do a good job with their renditions as a result. Regardless, this song opens with a very clever intro. Apparently, Jimmy Page either recorded one guitar track or maybe a couple, and kind of overdubbed them like 3 times in total. One of them being an octave higher than the others, and they used a phaser to kind of further distort it, giving it that kind of disorienting but almost ecstatic feel. And of course, it goes into the classic bluesy hard rock style. It also has a kind of stop and start again pattern. Every minute or so, you think it just stops. It goes into silence. You think the song's gonna end there, but then a few seconds later, it restarts and riff kind of continues on, and the song continues on, and all the singing and all that. It is a clever use of false climaxes in that regard, which is actually pretty interesting, and I haven't heard too many songs actually utilize such techniques. And then there's Candy Store Rock, definitely a throwback to the classic rock and roll songs of the 1950s. Robert Plant's vocals in this had that kind of accent to it, almost Elvis Presley-esque, and the drums are much more controlled in the song compared to other Zepp songs where the drums just go all wild. This one feels more calm, a bit more safe, and it's not exactly any wonder why this became pretty much the only single of the album. Regardless, it is still a very catchy beat of a song, and it's definitely worth a listen if you're a big fan of the old 50s rock and roll, rockabilly kind of tracks. Oh, and by the way, something I forgot to bring up earlier is that sometime after the Physical Graffiti album's release, Robert Plant had a bit of a car accident which kind of restrained him to a wheelchair. So when recording and producing the Presence album, Robert had to do most, if not all, his vocals while in a wheelchair. And I gotta say, it's not often you'll be able to sing and record vocals while in a disabled state, but I gotta give him kudos for at least trying to put still maintaining his classic effort as you would do when he's not in a condition like that. That takes guts to... It takes guts, man. It takes guts. Next is the penultimate track, Hot Song for Nowhere. Much like For Your Life, this definitely sounds and feels like more classic Led Zeppelin. A mix of bluesy and hard and heavy metal rock. It also takes a bit from the version of Nobody's Fault But Mine, specifically the stop, start technique. The guitar riff kind of pauses for a few seconds and then it starts over. And I still kind of like that. To me, it's in those few seconds of silence spread out the song and the one previously mentioned is where, in a way, the songs make the most noise. And much like For Your Life, Page also uses a Fender Stratocaster in this song, particularly in the solos, which definitely sound like something David Gilmour would play for one of the Pink Floyd songs. In terms of lyrics, it was somewhat inspired by the band's experiences in Malibu, California. The song definitely does feel like a kind of summer night kind of song, but still in a somewhat twisted, ironic kind of way. We then close out the album with probably, without all definitely, the second longest track of the album, T for One. This one was apparently inspired by Robert Plant's own personal feelings and issues he had felt being separated from his family, being all over the world for that. I think anyone can relate to that in that regard. Even to celebrities and rock stars being miles and so far away from the people you call family is very likely to cause a bit of distress, to be honest. This is also a very slow, bluesy song, which may justify its length pretty much. Both the vague, bleak, and enigmatic lyrics and the music do give off this feeling of how these hours seem to fade away into days and how time slips through our fingers and how all these opportunities just pass by us. It definitely does create a kind of bleak atmosphere, and I think almost kind of foreshadows the next album in a way. It paints the imagery of a lone man sitting in a pub, just sitting, drinking a pint or tea, and all the while just pondering. Like I said, it definitely foreshadows what may be to come in the few years since then. However, on the whole, Led Zeppelin's Presence is definitely one of the more underrated albums. It has some catchy moments, some good rock moments, a few bluesy moments, but overall it does paint, or at least capture and embody the, well, presence of the band as a whole. If you're a Led Zeppelin fan or hard rock overall, I think this is worth definitely giving a chance. Next time, we take a step into the other side of life with the Moody Blues. In the meantime, though, I got some stuff to deal with.